So South Africa is now ranked 72nd out of 180 countries for perceived levels of public sector corruption. That's according to the Transparency International's latest Corruption Perception Index. Now, the report highlighted the May elections this year as an opportunity to launch anti-corruption campaigns for public and civil society to hold the country's leaders to account. But are we making any progress in fighting corruption? Well, to answer some of those questions, we are joined now by OUTA's Executive Director, Advocate Stefanie Fick. Advocate Fick, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to get your thoughts on this. 72 out of 180, is that good or bad?
I don't think it's excellent. I mean, it's not at the bottom, but it is somewhere in the middle, and I think it's just below the average. It's higher than, the score for sub-Saharan Africa. But I think if you think about all the promises, during elections, after elections, the hope we got with, the GNU and all of that, is that one would have hoped that this is better. Now, there's the score and the rank, and the score is about the perception of what is happening in South Africa with regards to corruption, bribery, etc. And it means that from last year, it went down. So people are still thinking that there is more, there's more corruption now than there were, for example, in 2022.
Yeah, what's quite interesting about that is when you compare last year to this year, and you say, well, those perceptions have actually worsened over that period. One would have hoped that something as pivotal as an election as big as ours, I mean, in the run-up to this election in May 2024, there was a sense of this is going to be the big shift in how we view ourselves as a country, certainly how the world views us, and also our leadership. And perhaps, some expectation that we'd launch anti-corruption campaigns. Did that fall flat?
I don't think the campaigns has fall flat. I think what we've seen yet again is, there's on the one hand, the promises, and yes, this is what we're going to do. And then there's the implementation and the action. And I think if you compare those two, I don't think that the implementation, reached the heights of the promises that we've received. You just had a whole conversation about Joburg and the mayor and what is happening there. And Joburg is a metro. It's one of the biggest cities. It can't fail. So you do get the distinct impression that, when we have the discussions, there's all these promises about corruption. But if you go down, if you go and you delve deep into it, is that it appears that it's still just conversations, and we need to see action. We need to see accountability. And I think if you read what this, CPI index is about, it is about, whether a country is transparent, whether there is independent justice systems, etc. And that is what, for example, sub-Saharan Africa is struggling with. And these are the type of things we need to fix. These are the type of things that government needs to work on. The people on the ground need to see that people are being held accountable for corruption and that we are making headway in combating corruption. Is our combat of corruption fixing the problems that people are feeling on the ground? Have we created more jobs?
Yeah, we talk about feeling on the ground. Just earlier, we were talking about the front page of the Citizen this morning, reading 4 out of 5 of Joburg bridges are unsafe. And in fact, OUTA's very own Wayne Divenage is quoted in the article. 4 out of 5 of our bridges are unsafe. I need to repeat that because it's quite a significant number. And then what you hear from the Joburg Road Association, or agency rather, is that this is because of limited funds as per allocation per financial year. But OUTA's come out emphatically saying, well, no, the resources are there, correct?
Yes, I think if you look at, the financial statements of a lot of state-owned entities and local governments specifically, because this is where we feel the brunt of the corruption, is that it's never a problem with income. It's always how do we spend the money. And I think if the same with JRA, we're talking about bridges. How many traffic lights are actually working in Johannesburg? And this was an interesting question. If you go to work, how many traffic jams do you have to face? It is no longer load shedding. Now we can see that, no maintenance on traffic lights, the amount of inconvenience and the amount of, how many traffics are caused by traffic lights. And again, the question that you've asked, I think it is about how do we spend money, the exorbitant salaries we still see. And, does the money also get to our lower paid individuals? We see that senior management and all of that get exorbitant fees. And then the guys on the ground that are actually doing the work is not getting anything. And we really need to start concentrating on how we spend money.
Yeah, again, this is, and when we look at Transparency International CPI, I need to emphasize that it is about perceptions, right? So how people view perceptions of how we deal with corruption in the country. We've just had a discussion now as well about the former Joburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda, for instance, being put on special leave, and I wonder if we're good at putting up the image that we're cleaning up, the act of our officials, but not actually doing it. So, and is it something that certainly residents and citizens can see the difference between?
Yes, I sometimes think, do they think that, the people on the ground do not see these things? And I'm always wondering, what is the perception that our children are getting? If we want to fight this, scourge of corruption, it is also important. It's very important not to just talk about it, is that justice needs to be seen to be done. And although government appears to be very, we're going to battle corruption and we're going to eradicate it, what is, the proof is in the pudding. What are you actually doing? It's not about, someone is just quietly be removed from where there's an incident, and then lo and behold, 2-3 months down the line, oops, the person pops up somewhere else. And that someone, for example, in political parties, there's no real accountability for the people that is responsible for, corruption. And corruption, let us just also, corruption has got an impact on each and every individual in this country. The fact that socially there's still, economic divide and all of that, we are struggling with, creating jobs for people.
Yeah.
And you can lay that at the feet of corruption.
I want to look at what perhaps we can take from the countries that sit at the top of that CPI, though, right? You've got, for instance, Denmark, the top of the CPI for the 6th consecutive year with a score of 90. Really interesting. In the top 10, you've got Norway, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland, Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. And I could easily argue that these are countries that have, likely a lot more money than what we do. And if that's a big factor, right, and I think that's something to be speaking to. But what is it, the lessons that you think we can take from those particular countries? And just one more point, you've got as well the CPI also looking into our weakening, or talking about drawing attention to weakening justice systems worldwide. And there it ranks South Africa 56th out of 142 countries. So what are the key elements that bring that score up?
Yeah, we have to just, we are a developing country and we are a very new democracy. But I think what is important to take from this is that there's still work to be done in order to make this democracy work for everybody. Because I think you're still, there's an enormous amount of our people that are still struggling and not getting the service that they deserve because there's just no money, because money gets lost because of corruption. But I think if you look at some of the other countries, yes, it's bigger economies. But what does that tell us is that in order to grow our economy, which will provide more jobs and hopefully there's more money to deal with the social injustices that there are, is obviously we need to grow our economy. And part of that is transparency, make it possible for business to do business. I sometimes think we on the one hand, we make sure that there's a regulatory environment, but on the other hand, we make it nearly impossible for small businesses to really flourish in a country where they can create jobs for other people. But our justice system is extremely important. And I think we are still struggling to hold those to account. I mean, the NPA, I think there's been a lot of discussions with regards to the NPA and what do they need? Resources, people in the right positions in order for them to tackle and holding people to account, but also our police, our law enforcement, more visible policing, and make it possible for people to choose that as a career so that we have more young people wanting to go there and wanting to make sure that law enforcement in this country is good, that we bring down the crime rate. No one wants to invest in a country where crime rate is that high, but also it is unsafe for us as South Africans. So I really think that we have, we've done well. I don't think everything is bad. We are a new democracy. We've done a whole lot. We've got one of the best, I think, in my view, constitutions out there. But it needs to start working for the people, and we need to get rid of those individuals that are there in government, in private sector, to make money to the detriment of South Africans.
Well, of course, we're running it as our poll, and I want to bring it up quickly for our viewers. We're asking you how you, as a South African, view our democracy. Is it a flawed democracy, as it's been categorized in the latest Corruption Perception Index? Scan that QR code on the right side of the screen, and you can vote, yes, we're getting worse, or we could do better, or we've made some serious strides, right? Share your thoughts with us on the handle @Newzroom405 and the hashtag #AMReport405. Again, Advocate Fick, we talk about the importance of this election this year. One thing that this election did do was deliver us a government of national unity, or a grand coalition, as some are calling it. And one wonders now, as we get further into the 7th administration, if there's a sense that, I suppose, having this mix of political parties in government could mean that we'll see strengthening of institutions to ultimately deal with corruption. Your last thoughts there, Advocate?
I think the hope is there. I think what they've shown is there's hope that the politicians will put their egos aside and really work together in order to get South Africa where I think we deserve to be, because we've got some work to do. In the poll, like I've said, I don't think everything is bad. We've come a long way. But I think if you look at just the general well-being of some of South Africans, we're not there yet. We need to look after each and every South African. We need to have better schools. We need to have better healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. We have a way to go. So it's not the time to sit back and say, we have a democracy, we don't have to work. And I think each and every person in South Africa also needs to be vigilant, and let's hold our government to account, because it's a question of a lot of promises, but let's see if this government of unity is working, and whether, this will work. Not for the politicians, but for, each and every South African in South Africa. And if we can build the South Africa we love so much, diverse people, I think we really deserve better. But let's all come that we will strengthen our institutions that are there to build our democracy, and that we will really see justice and accountability. And most important, I think, transparent. The government needs to show us they're not scared to share with us the business that they are doing, and therefore spending our money in the best interest of South Africans.
Yeah. Advocate Stefanie Fick, an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time. She is, of course, the Executive Director of OUTA, responding to how Transparency International has ranked South Africa where its perceived levels of public sector corruption are concerned. 72nd out of 180. Is that a good position to be in? Share your thoughts with us @Newzroom405.